WOCA.
WOCA.
Diamonds in the sunset, now your time has come. A pretty yellow bird fly.
All right, 23 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this, what is today, Robin? Thursday morning. This morning we were having this discussion about things that are now politically incorrect, and some of these things was a list of things. Some of them made us chuckle, and some of them were absolutely mind-boggling why they would do some of these. I'm looking for the one that I wanted to use here. It had to do with not being allowed to talk about intelligent design. UK Council. Okay, I'm trying to find it here. Anyway, gosh, I wish I had it handy. But there was a decision by one university, I guess, that you could not bring up intelligent design in a biology class.
Yes.
Yeah, because everybody has figured it out, right? Everybody has figured out that we're right, and we're going to make you feel bad because we don't with your belief. We're going to make you feel bad with your belief. Well, we're not on our own. We have some deep thinkers out there who will help those of us who believe there is a God. Or, I always say intelligent design. The belief in intelligent design is kind of like the first step in changing your mind if you believe there is no God. If we can at least get you to say, you know what, there is some design here, well, then somebody must have been the one who was the designer, right?
Yes, exactly.
And that one must have had some intelligence. And there are so many different things you could say, but you get stumped when you have somebody who's more articulate than you are at trying to say there is no God. And so we have somebody on the phone who can help us out with this. Stephen C. Meyer is on the phone. He has written a book called Darwin's Doubt, The Explosive Origin of Animal Life and the Case for Intelligent Design. And I believe he's been with us before. I'm not really sure about that.
He has.
The explosive, let's see, he is a geophysicist, a researcher, the director of the Discovery Institute Center for Science and Culture, and a New York Times bestselling author. And oh, you found it for me? Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Before I say good morning, here's the politically correct thing. A professor at Ball State University in Indiana was recently banned from even mentioning the concept of intelligent design because it would supposedly, quote, violate the academic integrity, unquote, of the course that he was teaching. Okay, Thank you for finding that for me, Robin. Now, let me introduce Stephen C. Meyer. Good morning, Stephen.
It's great to be with you guys.
Yeah, this is a topic that I love. Every single, you've been with us before, and I know we've had conversations with you as well as others about this, and you and the others can articulate it so well that whenever I'm done with the interview, I always feel like, okay, I'm ready. Put me up against the best of them, and I fail every single time. I feel like they always get one up on me somehow, so good morning.
Well, it's great to be with you, and one of the ironies of this attempt to ban the discussion of intelligent design is the whole issue of design is really hard baked into the discussion of biological origins, and it's not just proponents of intelligent design who raise the question of design. It's been the Darwinists since the very beginning. One of the things that Darwin was trying to explain in The Origin of Species was the appearance of design in living organisms, and he thought he had found a way to explain that appearance without invoking an actual designer. That was the whole idea of his mechanism of natural selection. It's supposedly a mechanism that can mimic the powers of a designing intelligence without being designed or guided in any way. So, for example, Richard Dawkins, who's written these famous books, The Blind Watchmaker and The God Delusion, he says at the beginning of The Blind Watchmaker that biology is the study of complicated things that give the appearance of having been designed for a purpose. But of course, from the Darwinian point of view, the key word there is appearance or illusion. Things look designed, but they're not really designed because there's this unguided, undirected process that can do the job. That's where intelligent design comes in. We're making the opposite argument, saying, no, some of these appearances of design are indications of actual design. For example, the nanotechnology that we're finding in cells, the digital code that's stored in the DNA molecule, the complex information processing systems that we're finding inside living organisms that are not readily explained by the Darwinian mechanism, and in fact bear all the hallmarks of design systems that we know from our experience only arise from intelligence.
Wow. There was a video posted online earlier, maybe this month or whatever, not too long ago. And it was a time-lapse video of a nebula or something out in that the Hubble telescope photographed, and then they sped it up like 4 days worth of expansion of this thing that was expanding out and way out in space. And it looked just like a puff of smoke when they speeded it up. And when I looked at that, I thought, wow, the particles that we're actually seeing are probably bigger than Earth. And yet many, 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 many millions or billions of trillions of them, whatever the number would be, make it from this distance look like smoke. And it appeared to be following the same laws, I guess I don't know how to say this, but appearing to follow the same laws that a puff of smoke does right here on Earth. So
well, there are lots of wonderful things in the universe, and there are physicists who are talking increasingly about the evidence of design in the universe as a whole. They discuss something called the fine-tuning of the laws and constants of physics. It's been a major discovery in physics starting in the 1960s, and we just keep discovering new, what are called fine-tuning parameters. We live in a Goldilocks universe, in effect, where the fundamental forces of physics are not too strong or not too weak. They're balanced properly, one against the other,
right,
to allow for the possibility of life, the speed of light, the expansion rate of the universe. All these things end up being very finely tuned within a hair's breadth, such that if they were a slightly bigger, smaller, stronger, weaker, life would not be possible. And one physicist, Sir Fred Hoyle, who discovered, a very prominent Cambridge University physicist, who discovered one of the first of these fine-tuning parameters having to do with the resonance levels of the carbon atom, said that a common sense interpretation of the fine-tuning evidence from physics and chemistry suggests that a super intellect has monkeyed with physics to make life possible. I always like the way the monkeys get into the discussion.
That's funny.
Physics.
That's funny. Do you know when
there's evidence of design both in physics and in biology and in planetary science, and I think it's really a new day. The 19th century scientists wanted to explain everything by reference to matter and energy. They were materialists in that sense. But we now know there's a third fundamental entity in the physical world, and that entity is information. And what we know from experience is that it always takes a mind to generate information, and biology is chock full of information in digital form, in the DNA molecule, and other forms of information as well. And that's providing the basis for a really powerful new reformulation of the classical argument from design.
It's like a big gigantic circle. If as a little tiny baby you believe in God, no doubt. As you get older, you start to question God, and then you actually start to profess to know that there is no God, and then you really start looking at it, and then all of a sudden you say, well, maybe there's intelligent design, and it makes a big circle until finally you get right back to where you were when you were a baby, and you say there is a God.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a famous quote from Sir Francis Bacon that says pretty much what you just said, and I paraphrase, but he said, "A little philosophy inclineth a man's mind toward atheism, but depth in philosophy turns a man's mind back towards his maker." I might have might not be word for word, but it's the idea. Bacon, of course, was one of the founders of the scientific method, and philosophy in his day meant natural philosophy as well as other forms of philosophy. Yeah. So the more you learn, maybe these things you thought as a child aren't so incredible after all. And this is one of the enduring intuitions of human beings, that we live in a world that appears for all the world to be designed, and it seems to point to a mind behind it. And the great idea of Darwin, which was a kind of radical departure from the whole history of Western thought, was, well, maybe the design could be the result of an unguided, undirected process. Maybe we could have design without a designer. And what I show in the book, Darwin's Doubt, is that project, though intriguing, has actually failed, because the Darwinian mechanism of natural selection acting on random mutations doesn't have the creative power that's been attributed to it, and many evolutionary biologists themselves are coming to that opinion. And one of the key things it can't explain, as I show in the book, is the origin of all this digital code that you need to build the new animals that arise so suddenly in the history of life at different intervals.
And I have always thought that doubt was part of God's plan from the very beginning, because if the whole world was perfect, there wasn't any conflict, there wasn't anything to question, there wouldn't be any reason to really deviate from the belief in God. So he wants people to find their own way, but he also wants them to believe in him.
Well, it's all doubt is also part of science, and this is one of the really odd things about. And you were talking a little bit at the beginning about how essentially a form of political correctness has entered into scientific investigations and discussions. Today, all too often, if you question a particular scientific theory, you're accused of being anti-science or a science denier, or there's the people at Ball State. What was it? They said in the thing you quoted that it was you were diverting from scientific integrity.
Yeah, violate academic integrity. Yes.
Into academic integrity. But the idea of science isn't that you have a static body of knowledge that you never question, and that if you do question it, you're anti-science.
Yeah, right.
The idea is that you question and refine theories, and this whole debate about design is an ancient debate. And as we've learned more about it at different times, different positions seem to have gained ascendancy. But what Darwin knew in the 19th century is nothing like what we know today. He didn't know about genes. He didn't know about DNA. He didn't know about proteins. He didn't know about molecular machines or the complex information processing systems that I was talking about. And I think in light of those discoveries, the idea that this kind of simplistic mechanism like mutation and selection could produce all this is just incredible, and literally incredible. And there is a better explanation, and in Darwin's Doubt, I make that case. And I use Darwin's own method of scientific reasoning to do that. He had a principle of reasoning that said, if you want to explain an event in the remote past, you should invoke a cause which is known to have the power to produce the effect in question. And the one cause we know that does have the power to produce digital code is mind, it's intelligence. So using his method, I think we come to a different conclusion that he came to.
I have a question. When we talk about evolution and we talk about whether there's an intelligent a designer, meaning God, or that it was all just haphazard or something, we always talk about living things. I have a question about something that's, in my mind, not living, and yet it's evidence of God. If I spill gasoline as I'm filling up my lawnmower, that gasoline evaporates. If I spill any liquid, it evaporates. But the only liquid that comes out of the sky is water, and the water that comes out of the sky is essential for life, and all the other things would be very detrimental to life. And I've often thought, isn't that almost a miracle? And that is a miracle right there. The fact that the oceans evaporate, go up into the air, and then get carried over to the mountains, and then let go of that very water that came out of the ocean, all cleaned and ready to be used again.
Yeah.
And then it trickles down those mountains and comes to all of us through these things we call rivers, which ironically, or not ironically, but interestingly, look like our own veins.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have a colleague named Michael Denton who wrote a book years ago called Evolution, A Theory in Crisis, which is really a classic in the field. And he is working on a new book called Privileged Species, in which he's updating this fine-tuning idea that I was talking about. Most of the physicists have talked about the fine-tuning as it pertains to the basic laws and constants of physics, the fundamental principles that govern the whole of the universe. But he's showing that our planet is finely tuned to allow for complex, big-brained life like ourselves. And the water molecule and its many unique properties are just one of the many things that Denton looks at as, very clear evidence of design in preparing our planetary system for living organisms like ourselves. So I think he would say you're onto something.
The book is called Darwin's Doubt. Stephen C. Meyer is our guest, and he's the author of the book. It's a huge book. Did Darwin actually doubt?
Oh, he absolutely did. In his, and this is what's so troubling about this tendency in science and in the media today to say that if you doubt something, you're a science denier. Would we say that of Darwin? He didn't doubt his own theory was true, but he doubted that it could explain all the important evidence. And this key piece of evidence that he knew it couldn't explain is what I write about in the book. It's called the Cambrian explosion, the sudden, geologically abrupt appearance of the major forms of animal life. The first forms of animal life come into the fossil record absent any discernible ancestral forms from which they might have evolved in a Darwinian sense. And this really troubled Darwin. He said it was a valid objection to the views here entertained, referring to his own work in The Origin of Species.
Would he be astounded or even repulsed or delighted? What word would apply to how he would feel about people using his theory as a way to support their non-belief of God? Would he be okay with that?
Well, he was himself near the end of his life. Really, he said it. He said he was in a hopeless muddle about metaphysics, meaning this whole question of God's existence. He was an agnostic. He gave lip service to God in the closing passage of the Origin, but he saw that if his theory was true, if there was no evidence of actual design, it was hard to see that there was any publicly accessible evidence for the existence of God, because the evidence of design is the most publicly accessible evidence. It's from the natural world. And so modern neo-Darwinists like Richard Dawkins have said that Darwin made it possible to be an intellectually fulfilled atheist. On the other hand, I at least entertain the fantasy that if we were able to talk to Darwin, we would be able to make today a very compelling argument to him that he would understand for actual intelligent design. Because as I said, in making my case for intelligent design, I used the method of historical scientific reasoning that he himself pioneered. And his key principle was that you need to invoke a cause that's known to have the capacity to explain the effects in question. Random mutations, which are essentially copying errors in genetic text, are not an adequate explanation for the origin of new code. But intelligent agents are. We know from experience that if it takes a programmer to make a program, it takes an intelligent agent to write a book or to generate information of any kind, and that we have found information at the foundation of life, something that Darwin didn't know about, I think would, if he were in a fair-minded mood, move him in our direction on this topic. But that's speculation.
And if there wasn't intelligent design, then look at the world of animals. I mean, dogs would be attracted to cats. Birds might be attracted to whales, that type of thing. But everybody stays within their own species.
Well, there's a stable order to nature, and in fact, that stable order, the fact that like produces like, is a byproduct of the informational programs that are embedded in the DNA and stored in other places in living organisms. It's not by accident. There is information, instructions that determine that offspring will be like their parents. And so the origin of that information is really the critical question in biology. Where did it come from?
I'm not a Bible scholar, but I wanted to bring something up from the Bible. The Bible says, and this is the book of John 1. I had to Google it real quickly so I would know, but John 1, is that how you say that, Robin? Mm-hmm. The first book of whatever. It says, in the beginning was the Word. And I often wonder why it's written that way. In the beginning was the Word. I mean, you would think...
It's an incredible connection. I should, put my cards on the table. Many proponents of intelligent design or there are proponents of intelligent design who are not Christians or religiously Orthodox Jewish people, but there are a number of people who are proponents of intelligent design who see the connection to religious belief. And I happen to be one of those. I'm a Christian myself. I have some good colleagues here at Discovery who are Orthodox Jews. They see it too. And the Judeo-Christian perspective is that whether it was in the beginning God said, or as in the Old Testament, or from the book of John 1, as you just mentioned, in the beginning was the Word, there's this odd connection between what science is discovering, that information is primary to life, it's necessary to produce life, and the biblical view that the agent of God's creation is His Word.
Yeah, and word is an idea. An idea is a word. Right, it goes back and forth.
In fact, information is an idea instantiated in code, and it's pretty fascinating that's what we're coming to in modern science.
In past interviews with you, I don't know if I've said this, and I apologize if I'm being repetitive, but I've made an observation about creation of mankind versus creation of God. Our creation, men's creation, has lots and lots and lots of straight lines. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult to find a straight line in God's world. Yeah. There might be one. I can't find one. Even the horizon isn't really straight.
Exactly.
Well, let me tell you a story if we've got just a minute. When I was finishing my first book, Signature in the Cell, I had we had a Microsoft programmer, one of their elite architect level programmers, who had retired for a time, which meant I think he was 38. And he was writing code for us to help us simulate how the information in DNA produces all the intricate protein machines that I've been talking about. And he walked into my office one day and threw a book down on the table called Design Patterns. And this is apparently a standard design manual for computer software engineers. And as he threw it down on the table, he said, "I get an eerie feeling that someone figured all this stuff out before us." And he's pointing at the book, and I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, a design pattern is an established design strategy, and in computer science, that means a strategy for processing and storing information." And he said, "As I'm learning the molecular biology, so I can write the code to simulate what's going on in your world, in this world of biology that you study, I'm discovering design patterns that we recognize from advanced high-tech digital computing." Except that one thing is, he said that these design patterns, automated error correction, like we have a spell check in the computer, the cell uses a very similar kind of strategy. Nested coding of information, messages embedded in other messages, an established method of cryptography. And he went on, and he said, but the only difference is that we see the same design patterns, but they're executed with an elegance that far exceeds our own, an 8.0, 9.0, 10.0 elegance. He started to talk Microsoft talk. So it's really fascinating as you get deeply into this. It's not just that there's digital code. It's that the way in which the cell is processing information in every way bespeaks a higher form of intelligence being behind the whole show.
Wow, isn't that fascinating? Wow.
Very much so.
So in computer programming, we don't follow the straight line thinking. we allow ourselves to be more like God than the...
Well, but there's layers. What we keep finding in life, too, is that unlike our machines, where every cause is an effect of something else, it's kind of linear. You can track the flow of things. In the living system, there are machines, but you have these wheels within wheels within wheels of integrated complexity, and it really is mind-blowing sometimes, mind-boggling, because it's every time we think we've really drawn a bead on the way things work, there's another layer that we discover, and it's just really quite an extraordinary time in biology.
You have a wonderful way of speaking. I love speaking to you. Stephen C. Meyer, I have a copy of Stephen's book. It's called Darwin's Doubt. If you want the copy that was sent to me, you may call me right now and ask for it. I'll leave it for you here at the station. The rest of us have to go buy it. How do we do that?
Usual suspects online, Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, Google Books, all those folks. And then it's in the bookstores, in Barnes & Noble in particular. Some of the bookstores, though, have bowed to pressure from some of the politically correct forces you were talking about, have classified it as a book of religion or theology. The book has 742 scientific references. It tells a science story, but it's being classified as a religious book. So a lot of people go to the bookstores, can't find it, so they just need a heads up to know that they got to toggle over to the religion section to find it.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for being on there. We have somebody on the phone wanting the book. I'll talk to that person off the air. We've got to leave to go to Fox News. Thank you, Stephen Meyer. Thank you. We'll be right back.
Always great to be with both of you. I really
from the
enjoyed the
Paddock Mall
conversation.
Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. The escalating conflict in Iraq has the NATO Secretary General putting out this warning.
Unless the government reaches out to other groups in the Iraqi society, there is a clear risk that the country will be split.
Anders Fogh Rasmussen speaking to Fox sister network Sky News. President Obama weighing our options. Parts of the country's midsection getting slammed by Mother Nature. A tornado